The wind carried the dry whisper of sand across the vast emptiness of the Arizona desert. Heat waves shimmered above the cracked ground, and not a single tree offered shade. Just a brutal, open stretch of nothingness. This wasn't the kind of place you'd stumble upon, this was where you went to disappear. Lily Thompson had no idea why they were there. Her wheelchair bumped against the uneven terrain as her husband, Brad, pushed her deeper into the desolate expanse. Each rotation of the wheels left faint impressions in the dirt, tracks that would vanish within hours under the relentless wind. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting elongated shadows that made the landscape look even more surreal. Lily looked up at him, her voice barely louder than the wind. "Brad, where are we going?" He didn't meet her eyes. "Just further." That wasn't an answer. And his voice didn't sound like Brad. Not the Brad she married. Not the man who once brought her soup when she had the flu, who held her hand during her recovery after the accident that took her ability to walk. No, this Brad was distant. Cold. Efficient. Lily's stomach twisted. The silence between them was louder than any storm. She tried again. "I'm getting really uncomfortable. Can we please turn around?" Brad stopped walking. For a long moment, he just stared out at the nothingness. Then, he looked down at her and said something that made her blood run cold. "I can't do this anymore. You're not who you used to be. And I'm not going to waste the rest of my life being your caretaker." Lily's heart skipped. "What?" He stepped behind her and gave the wheelchair a final push forward. It rolled a few feet and stopped. "You'll be fine," he muttered. "There's water. A blanket. You have your phone." "But there's no signal," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Brad didn't answer. He was already walking back to the car. And then he was gone. Just like that. Lily sat frozen in the middle of the desert, the last rays of sunlight casting a golden halo around her, like some tragic statue abandoned by the world. Her hands trembled as she looked down at the small backpack he'd dropped beside her. A half-full bottle of water. A basic flashlight. No medicine. No GPS. Tears welled in her eyes, but she fought them back. She wasn't ready to break down. Not yet. "Think," she told herself. "There has to be something I can do." But even as she fumbled for her phone, trying to refresh her screen for a signal, the brutal truth settled over her like the desert heat. Brad hadn't brought her out here for a sunset view or to have a difficult conversation. He had come to leave her. To die. She yelled after him. Screamed. Called his name until her voice cracked. Only the desert responded, echoing her cries into emptiness. Miles away from any road, any town, any help. Lily was alone. At least, she thought she was. But someone had seen everything. Unbeknownst to Brad, a black Jeep had followed them from the edge of Tucson. Its driver kept a wide distance, staying low behind scrub brush and rock formations. He'd seen Brad's car in the city, seen Lily in the passenger seat, looking uncertain. Off. Something about her body language didn't sit right with him. Something about Brad's posture screamed bad intent. So, he followed. He had no real plan. Just instinct. That instinct was sharpened by years of combat deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq, counter-surveillance missions in war zones where a wrong read could cost you your life. His name was Tyler Grant. Former Navy SEAL. Recently discharged. And a man who hadn't spoken to Lily in nearly 8 years. He hadn't planned to find her again. In fact, he thought she had disappeared from the public eye for good, after the accident, after the articles stopped mentioning her name, after her startup was handed over to her trustworthy husband for recovery support. He only knew she'd been hurt. And then, she vanished. But today, by pure chance, or fate, he saw her again. And something didn't feel right. So he followed. Quietly. Carefully. And now, from a distance, behind the boulder-strewn rise just beyond the clearing where Brad had left her, Tyler watched. He saw the wheelchair in the middle of nowhere. The sun sinking lower. The man walking away without hesitation. He knew exactly what was happening. And he knew exactly what he had to do. Just 2 years ago, Lily Thompson was on the cover of TechBridge Weekly, hailed as the next Elon Musk, but with better social skills. She had co-founded VibeNet, a next-gen AI integration company based in San Francisco, and by 33, she was already negotiating Series C funding with international investors. At that time, she had it all: success, visibility, respect. And love, or so she thought. Brad, her husband of 5 years, was a charming, handsome architect with a passion for sustainability. They were the kind of couple who inspired hashtags. Their wedding was featured on a lifestyle blog, and their renovated mid-century home was the envy of every Pinterest board. They met in college. She spilled green juice on his sketchbook at a design conference. He made a joke. She blushed. They clicked. What no one knew, what not even Lily fully grasped, was how much Brad resented her success. When people asked what Brad did, they always followed up with, "But Lily's the tech genius, right?" Brad smiled in photos, but deep inside, cracks were forming. Then came the accident. It happened on a snowy weekend in Lake Tahoe. A freak collision on a ski slope, another skier, out of control, slammed into her at full speed. A sickening snap. She remembered the stillness. The way the world tilted. The look on Brad's face when he knelt beside her in the snow. That was the last time he looked truly scared for her. The doctors called it a complete spinal cord injury. T6 level. No more walking. No more hiking. No more dancing in the kitchen. Just a wheelchair, painkillers, and a new way of moving through the world. Lily's world collapsed. But only at first. In true Lily fashion, she refused to let tragedy define her. She hired an adaptive design team. Turned her home into a smart, accessible space. Began mentoring other disabled women in tech. She even scheduled a TEDx talk about resilience. But that's when Brad began to change. It started small. A misplaced invoice here. A missed therapy session there. Then, do you really need to work right now? Maybe focus on your recovery. Then, let me handle the investors for a while. Just rest. Then, why are you wearing makeup? There's no one to impress. She told herself he was just stressed. Adjusting. That they both were. But deep down, she could feel it. The shift. The weight in the air when he entered a room. The lack of eye contact. The way he hesitated before touching her. He was slipping away. And not gently. Soon, her company emails were being forwarded to Brad. Just to keep things running smoothly. He promised it was temporary. Then came the new assistant, Amber. Young. Blonde. Confident in that flirty, calculated way. Brad said she was just helping around the office. But Lily wasn't blind. She saw the sideways glances. The laughter that stopped when she rolled in. The growing distance in her own home. She told her therapist she felt like a guest in her marriage. Her therapist told her to set boundaries. But when Lily tried, Brad got cold. He told her she was getting paranoid. That she was too emotional. That maybe the accident affected more than just your legs. Gaslighting. She knew the word. She knew the signs. But it's one thing to spot abuse in a documentary, and another to recognize it in the man who once whispered "I love you" into your hair at 3 a.m. Still, she tried to fight back. She secured a freelance contract on her own. She dug up her old college email and began discreetly communicating with former colleagues. She began researching how to reclaim control of her company. Brad found out. She didn't know how, but he did. And that's when things got darker. One night, he accidentally deleted all her backed-up design files. Claimed the hard drive was corrupted. Another time, he left her outside the gym in 40-degree rain while he took a quick call inside. 45 minutes. No apology. He began locking the home office. Changed the Wi-Fi password. Started checking her messages when he thought she wasn't looking. She started hiding her phone in her chair cushion. Every day felt like a battle she wasn't sure she had the strength to fight. And then, like a final twisted joke, he started acting sweet again. He came home early one evening with takeout from her favorite vegan Thai spot. Set the table. Lit candles. Said he wanted a fresh start. I thought we could take a drive this weekend, he said, rubbing her shoulders. Somewhere quiet. Just the two of us. A part of her wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, the man she loved still existed somewhere beneath the bitterness and betrayal. So she agreed. She packed light. He helped her into the SUV. He smiled more than usual. Told her to bring a jacket, it might get chilly where they were going. She never suspected. Not really. But Tyler did. Lily's breathing was shallow as the sky turned from gold to bruised purple. The desert silence pressed in on her like a physical weight. She tried to call out one last time, Brad. But her voice cracked into nothing. The wind swallowed the name like it was never meant to be said again. She had never felt so disposable. So forgettable. For the first time in her life, Lily Thompson, who once gave keynotes at international conferences, who had her own TED Talk, who mentored young women in STEM, felt erased. But just as the edge of panic began to blur her thoughts, a sound broke through the stillness. Footsteps. Crunching. Measured. Deliberate. Her hand flew to the flashlight, her body tensing, mind torn between hope and dread. Was Brad coming back out of guilt, or was it something worse? She aimed the weak beam toward the sound. And froze. A figure emerged from the desert haze, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with calm precision. A hood covered most of his face until the wind swept it back, and then, her heart stuttered. Tyler, she gasped. Even under the dirt and shadow, she'd know those eyes. Tyler Grant. The man she hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Her college boyfriend. Her almost forever. Now standing in front of her like a ghost returned for unfinished business. He stepped closer, crouched beside her wheelchair. You okay? He asked, his voice gravelly but calm, eyes scanning her quickly, old instinct kicking in. She couldn't answer. Her throat had closed up, her brain still catching up with reality. How are you here? She finally managed. I followed you, he admitted, tone low. Something felt off. I saw him load you in the car. Saw the way he looked at you. So I followed. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like anyone would have done that. But she knew better. No one else had come looking. Only Tyler. Before she could argue, Tyler was already in motion. Wrapping a blanket gently over her legs. Checking the bag Brad had left. Then, without asking, he slipped one arm behind her back, the other under her knees. Wait, she said, voice weak. I'm heavy. I've carried 200-pound Marines through sniper zones, he replied, already lifting her with controlled ease. You're light. She didn't argue again. As he moved with steady determination across the rocky terrain, Lily could feel the heat radiating off him, not just physical warmth, but a kind of emotional heat, a presence that filled the air. I have a place nearby, he murmured. Cabin. Solar-powered. Off-grid. Safe. She nodded, burying her face briefly against his shoulder. He still smelled like pine and gun oil. Like memory. It didn't feel real. She'd been discarded, abandoned like yesterday's news. And now she was in the arms of the one person who used to know her better than anyone. The cabin was nothing like Brad's minimalist show home. It was rugged, warm, built with intention. Wide doorways. Low countertops. A fireplace already crackling to life. Tyler moved with efficient grace. He laid her on a sofa, handed her water, retrieved a med kit. "You've done this before," she noted softly. He gave a dry smile. "Too many times." "Where have you been all these years?" "Afghanistan. Syria. Then private security. Now, here. And you just happened to find me?" He met her gaze, quiet but intense. "I looked for you, Lily. A while ago. Saw you dropped off the radar. Then saw Brad. Didn't like what I saw. You followed your gut?" He nodded. "It's never failed me." Her chest tightened. She had spent over a year being gaslit, told she was overreacting, imagining things, broken beyond usefulness. And here was someone who saw her. Really saw her. Like he always had. The first night, she couldn't sleep. Her body hurt. Her mind hurt more. She lay in the quiet cabin, listening to the crackle of fire and the low hum of Tyler's breath from the other room. He'd insisted on giving her the bed, sleeping on the couch like some old-school protector. At one point, she whispered into the dark, "Why did you come?" Silence. Then, "Because I couldn't let it end like that." The next day, Tyler went back for her wheelchair. When he returned, it wasn't just the chair he brought. It was her purse. Her emergency meds. Her dignity. She broke down when he handed it to her. Not because of the items, but because of what they meant. Someone cared enough to remember her needs. Not convenience. Not optics. Not liability. Her. He stayed quiet, just sat with her as she cried. Didn't touch her. Didn't ask questions. Just was there. That presence, calm, unshakable, was a balm to everything she'd been missing. Over the next 24 hours, the emotional pieces began to slot into place. She told him everything. How Brad had slowly taken over her company. The lies. The surveillance. The way he made her feel like she was crazy. Tyler listened like he was absorbing battle intel. Focused. Stoic. But every now and then, a muscle in his jaw twitched. His eyes darkened. This wasn't just neglect, he said. It was a plan. Lily nodded. I don't know what to do now. Tyler sat forward. We build a case. We don't go to the police yet, not without proof. But we'll get it. Financials. Emails. Timeline. I know people. Why? She asked again, voice cracking. Why are you doing this? He hesitated. Then, because you didn't deserve any of this. And I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I hadn't let you go. Her breath hitched. They didn't talk about that again. But that night, when he helped her into bed, she reached for his hand. Held it. Didn't let go. Tyler stared at the monitor, the desert dawn casting thin light over the cabin floor. On the screen was Brad. His SUV. And Lily's slumped figure beside it. The grainy footage came from a dash cam Tyler had mounted in his Jeep long ago, more out of habit than intention. It had captured everything. From the moment Brad pulled off the highway onto the dirt trail, to the instant he left Lily in the open like discarded luggage. Tyler paused the video at the exact frame Brad looked over his shoulder, expression blank, before turning away for good. There it was. Proof. The date. The time. The abandonment. The supplies he left behind. The lack of hesitation. Premeditated. There would be no he said, she said. This was evidence. He turned the laptop toward Lily, who sat at the small dining table, sipping weak coffee with shaking hands. Her eyes were still rimmed with exhaustion, but her back was straight. Something inside her had clicked back into place overnight. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was angry. When she saw the screen, she inhaled sharply. You filmed this? Dash cam, he said simply. It auto-records. Has GPS embedded too? Lily blinked. He's going to say I wanted to be left there. That I asked for space. Tyler didn't respond immediately. He clicked open another window, an audio file. Lily's voice came first. Brad, where are we going? Then his response. Somewhere you'll be less of a problem. Crystal clear. Lily sat still for a long moment. I knew he was cruel, she said quietly. But I didn't think he'd actually. She broke off. Tyler reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. You don't have to finish that sentence. She looked at him. What do we do with this? We take him down. Within the next 6 hours, Tyler had assembled a team. A contact from his SEAL days, now a private investigator, drove up from Phoenix. His name was Marcus. Clean-cut, quiet, carried a tablet and 2 phones. The kind of guy who didn't talk unless it mattered. Tyler and Marcus spent the day cross-referencing IP addresses, location data, and text backups from Lily's old accounts. Once they recovered her secondary email, they found months' worth of correspondence between Brad and investors under her name. Fraud. Identity misuse. Financial abuse. Then there was the message from Amber, timestamped 2 weeks prior. Once she's out of the picture, we'll finally have breathing room. You deserve to be happy. It wasn't direct. But in the context of everything else, it was damning. Textbook premeditation, Marcus said flatly. This wasn't a breakdown. This was an exit strategy. Tyler nodded grimly. We'll bring it all. But they needed more than data. They needed a case. The next morning, Lily met with Julia Hammond, a domestic violence attorney with a reputation for burying abusers under court orders and subpoenas. She was tough, fast-talking, wore combat boots with her business suit, and didn't blink once through Lily's entire story. When Lily finished speaking, Julia leaned back and said, He's not just abusive. He's sloppy. She flipped open her notepad. We'll start with emergency asset protection. Then we go for a restraining order. After that? Civil and criminal charges. But he'll spin it, Lily murmured. He always spins it. Julia smiled, a little too gleefully. Not when we're the ones releasing the footage first. That night, Julia contacted a local reporter with a growing TikTok channel that focused on exposing emotional abuse in high-profile relationships. She sent them a short, edited version of the dashcam video, cut with Lily's recorded statement. It hit 2 million views in 24 hours. The comments poured in. She's disabled and he left her in the desert? How is this man not arrested yet? Massive respect to her ex for stepping up. That's a real one. Lawsuit incoming. And I'm here for it. Within hours, Brad's office was bombarded with calls. His architect firm released a vague statement about him taking a leave of absence. Amber locked her Instagram. And Brad? He texted 20 times. Pleading. Then threatening. Lily didn't respond. But the police did. The arrest happened quietly. Early morning. Unmarked cars. No cuffs on camera. But Tyler made sure the district attorney received everything. The dash cam. The GPS logs. The texts. The financial documents. Even Amber's coded messages. By the end of the week, Brad was facing charges for fraud, emotional abuse, falsifying documents, and, pending confirmation from the prosecutor, attempted murder by abandonment. That last one was rare. But not unprecedented. And this time, the evidence was airtight. Lily sat at the edge of Tyler's porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the wind move across the sand. She wasn't smiling. But she wasn't crying either. Behind her, Tyler leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, silent. She turned slowly. "I thought he'd get away with it," she said. "Most do," he answered. She looked back out at the desert. But not this one. He stepped forward, knelt beside her chair. "No. Not this one." 6 months after the arrest, Lily Thompson wheeled herself into a freshly painted corner unit in downtown Phoenix. The walls were a calming sage green. The floors smooth oak laminate, wheelchair-friendly. Natural light poured in from the massive windows. A brushed steel sign hung proudly behind the reception desk. Revive, accessibility by design. Built by survivors, for survivors. Lily adjusted her position and looked around. 2 desks were already occupied, one by Jasmine, a UX consultant who was blind, and another by Rob, a veteran with a prosthetic leg who handled physical space redesigns for small businesses. This was her new family. Her new legacy. When the media's storm around Brad's arrest finally settled, Lily had choices: retreat into anonymity, let her trauma define her, or use it. So she'd used it. She took the settlement money, not much, but enough, and reinvested it. She met with accessibility advocates. She built a consulting agency that helped companies, schools, and public venues become truly inclusive, not just ADA compliant on paper. And she didn't just design for buildings. She designed for dignity. For the woman who didn't want to wait in the back alley to enter a restaurant. For the teen who couldn't reach the lab sink in science class. For the job applicant who didn't need special treatment, just an equal shot. People started to notice. A viral TikTok. A write-up in Fast Company. A keynote invitation from a global tech conference. Suddenly, Lily Thompson, the woman whose husband left her in the desert to die, was leading the conversation on empowered accessibility. And for the first time since her accident, she didn't feel broken. She felt rebuilt. Brad's trial ended in a guilty verdict. Fraud. Abuse. Endangerment. Attempted manslaughter by abandonment. He appealed, of course. Claimed mental stress. Accused Lily of exaggeration. Said she left voluntarily. But the dashcam said otherwise. The GPS said otherwise. The footage of him loading her suitcase and water like she was a problem being removed said otherwise. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The judge's words echoed across the courtroom. "Mr. Prescott, this wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a pattern. And you left a human being in a life-threatening situation to reclaim your convenience. This court finds that unconscionable." He got 8 years. Amber fled to Oregon. Nobody cared. And Tyler? He stayed. He never pushed. Never assumed. Just showed up. Drove her to physical therapy. Helped her test wheelchair prototypes in narrow hallways. Brought her cinnamon coffee and peanut butter protein bars when she worked late. Sometimes they sat on the porch of his cabin in the desert, saying nothing. Sometimes they stayed up till 2 a.m., reliving college stories or discussing where to install a grab bar at a new office space. One night, Lily looked at him and said, "I'm not who I used to be." He met her gaze. "Neither am I. But I like who you are now." She didn't respond right away. But the next morning, she asked if he wanted to look at apartments in the city, together. Lily never walked again. But she stood. In boardrooms. In courtrooms. In conference halls full of doubters and decision-makers. She stood, with her words, her presence, her quiet ferocity. She no longer felt like a woman who had been abandoned. She felt like a woman who had returned to herself. As the first client of the day walked through the glass doors of Revive, Lily wheeled forward to greet them. "Welcome," she said, smiling. "Let's design something that works for you."